Everyone inside Edenbrook Café froze when it happened. A poor black waitress trying to pay for one slice of bread, and an Arab billionaire CEO rising from his seat to say the words. That silenced the entire room. Sit down. Eat first. Amora Endler's voice shook as she stood at the counter, fingers trembling around a single wrinkled dollar. I just need one slice. I haven't eaten since yesterday. The room shifted. Not a sound. Only the quiet discomfort of people pretending they didn't see someone breaking. The cashier's patience snapped. We don't sell slices. Full loaf or nothing. You're holding the line. Her shoulders tightened. Her breath caught. And the humiliation in her eyes went deeper than hunger. Then, a chair moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Every head turned. Because the man who stood up wasn't ordinary. He wasn't even close. Khalid al-Rummi. The Arab Billionaire CEO whose presence felt sharper than any corner office boardroom he owned. Dark tailored suit, quiet authority, and a commanding stillness that made people straighten instinctively. He had watched the entire moment. Not with pity, but with a precise, simmering anger reserved only for injustice. He walked to the counter, each step tightening the atmosphere until even the sunlight through the windows felt tense. The cashier froze. A lawyer at the back stopped mid-sentence. A mother put down her coffee cup. Khalid positioned himself beside Amora, his shadow covering her fragility. Then his voice, calm but carrying the weight of power, cut through everything. This woman will sit. She will eat. And she will not pay for anything today. Gasps. Mutters. Stares. Amora looked at him, stunned, unsure if she should step away or collapse. Khalid lowered his tone, but the authority deepened. Sit down, he said again. Eat first. We will talk after. It wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was dignity, returned to someone who had forgotten what it felt like. And the cafe waited, breath tight, to see why a billionaire cared. And what he would do next. Amora didn't move at first. Her body felt stiff, unsure whether to obey the stranger or run from the attention now burning across her skin. People were still staring, half curious, half judgmental, whispering like she was a spectacle instead of a human being fighting to breathe through her hunger. Khalid didn't wait for permission. He turned to the nearest server, a young man who had stopped mid-step. Bring her a full meal, he said calmly. Something warm. Something real. And bring water. The server nodded quickly and hurried away, his eyes wide as if he'd just been handed a royal decree. Amora's voice trembled. I didn't ask for a meal, sir, I can't afford. You don't need to afford it, he replied, his tone firm yet strangely gentle. You need to eat. He gestured toward an empty table near the window. Please. Still overwhelmed, she moved slowly, almost mechanically, as she lowered herself into the chair. She kept her hands folded in her lap, as if afraid touching anything would cost her. Khalid didn't return to his original seat. Instead, he stood for a moment near her table, observing her delicate breaths, the way she pressed her lips together to keep them from quivering. Something in her struggle seemed to hit him harder than he expected. Something familiar. Something that didn't belong to her, but to a memory he carried. Across the cafe, two executives whispered. Is that him? Al-Rummi. The investment group guy. Why is he helping her? She's probably just. Khalid's eyes flicked toward them without a single word, and both men went silent instantly, lowering their gazes like children caught misbehaving. The server returned with a steaming plate, eggs, warm bread, a small bowl of soup, and a fresh croissant. The smell alone made Amora's throat tighten as her stomach knotted painfully. The meal was placed in front of her. She stared at it. Hard. Like she was afraid it would disappear if she blinked. Khalid noticed. Eat, he said calmly. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the spoon. The first sip of soup made her eyes shut involuntarily, as if warmth itself had found her after being lost for too long. She took another spoonful, and another, faster this time. A tear slipped down her cheek. Amora wiped it quickly, embarrassed, but Khalid saw everything. His voice softened. When was the last time you had a real meal? She stopped eating, staring at the table. I don't remember, she whispered. He inhaled deeply, not out of pity but frustration, not at her, but at a world where someone who looked exhausted yet dignified could fall through the cracks unnoticed. What happened? He asked quietly. You work across the street, don't you? She nodded, swallowing hard. At Larkson's diner. Dishwasher. Sometimes waitress when they need someone. She hesitated, then added, they cut my hours last week. And my landlord raised the rent again. Her voice tightened around the next words. I've been choosing between rent and food. Khalid didn't interrupt. He let her speak, absorbing every detail like a man calculating a far bigger problem than hunger. And your employer? He asked after a moment. Why didn't they help? She gave a bitter laugh, a small, sharp sound. Help? Sir, they dock my pay if I'm 5 minutes late. Yesterday I fainted washing dishes and they told me not to come back until I get myself together. Khalid's jaw flexed, a muscle tightening near his temple. He had built empires, bought companies, ended careers with 4 words spoken across polished boardroom tables. But something about this quiet suffering happening directly in front of him, struck a different nerve. Who is your manager? He asked, voice low. Amora's eyes widened, as if she feared what he might do with that information. I don't want trouble, she whispered. I just needed a little food today. I didn't mean to cause a scene. You didn't cause a scene, he replied, leaning in slightly. Hunger did. Neglect did. Injustice did. She looked at him fully now, truly looked, and for the first time, she realized his anger wasn't aimed at her situation alone. It was deeper, older, as if he had stood in similar shoes once, or watched someone he loved stand there. Finish your food, Khalid said, his tone shifting into something decisive. Because when you're done, we're going across the street. Her breath caught. Across the street? To the diner. Yes, he said simply. To the place that treated you as if you were disposable. Amora's eyes widened with alarm. Sir, please. Khalid raised a hand again, not to silence her, but to reassure. His voice lowered, smooth, steady, unshakably certain. No one who survives hunger with dignity is disposable. And no one who mistreats you will hide behind their apron today. A ripple went through the cafe. People exchanged glances. Some leaned forward, sensing a storm brewing. And Amora, trembling, exhausted, but no longer invisible, stared at the man who had stepped into her life like a verdict. Khalid's gaze locked with hers, unwavering. When you are finished, he said, I am going to make sure you are never humiliated in this city again. Her spoon slipped slightly, hitting the bowl's rim. Because those weren't the words of a stranger. They were the words of a man who had already made up his mind. Amora finished the last bite slowly, almost reluctantly, as if eating too fast would make the moment vanish. Her body felt warmer, steadier, but her heart hammered with growing fear. Khalid hadn't moved from where he stood. Not once. He simply watched, not in judgment, not in pity, but with a steady, unreadable focus that made everyone else in the cafe tiptoe with their eyes. When she finally set her spoon down, her fingers brushed the edge of the plate. Thank you, she whispered, barely audible. Khalid nodded once, not dismissing her gratitude, but acknowledging it with a kind of respect she wasn't used to receiving. Come, he said. Her throat tightened. To the diner. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he offered his hand, not to hold, but as an invitation to stand with dignity, not shame. A gesture so simple yet so rare in her world that her chest ached. She rose slowly. Several customers pretended to be busy with their laptops, but their eyes followed the pair like a silent procession of witnesses. As they stepped toward the door, Khalid's 2 security aides instinctively moved to follow, but he lifted a hand without turning back. I don't need you, he said. A statement of power. A statement of intent. When they stepped outside, the city noise felt strangely muted. It was early afternoon, streets bright and active, people passing, cars moving, a breeze carrying distant traffic sounds. Everything looked normal. But inside Amora's chest, nothing felt normal. The diner across the street, Larkson's, sat under its faded sign, the paint chipped around the edges. She stared at it as if it were a cliff she had to jump from. "Khalid, please," she whispered. "I don't want trouble. I just needed food today. If my manager sees me with you, he'll think I'm trying to cause issues." Khalid walked calmly beside her, each step a contrast to her shaky pace. "What your manager thinks," he said, "is irrelevant. What he did is not." Her breath shuddered. "But he'll fire me. Then he'll answer to me for that too." She stared at him, stunned. It was difficult to grasp the scale of someone who spoke as if consequences were not obstacles, just details he could rearrange. As they reached the crosswalk, she felt her feet slow. Her body resisted. Khalid turned his head toward her gently, voice deep, nearly a whisper but firm enough to stop the world around them. "Amora, if you walk back into that diner alone, they will continue to treat you as if you are worth less than the dishes you wash." He paused, letting the truth settle. "Walk with me, and they will never forget your name again." Her eyes stung. Not because of the promise, but because no one had ever said her name with that kind of certainty. She inhaled shakily and nodded. They crossed. Inside Larkson's diner, the familiar clatter of dishes and frying pans mixed with the hum of conversations. A draft carried the smell of old oil and reheated fries. Ordinary to everyone else, suffocating to her. Khalid pushed open the door, the small bell chiming overhead. The noise inside instantly softened as people looked up. A man in a too-tight button-down shirt stood behind the counter. Brent Mallory, the manager. Red-faced, always irritated, always calculating how to squeeze more labor out of less staff. He looked at Amora, eyes narrowing. "You're back? I told you to come when you fixed your..." His voice cut mid-sentence when he noticed Khalid beside her. Not just noticed, recognized. Everyone did eventually. His face had been on finance magazines, global business news, investor summits. Brent's mouth fell open. Mr. Al-Rumi? I didn't know you were. I mean, welcome, sir, but we weren't informed." Khalid didn't respond with a greeting. He stepped forward, his tone sharp enough to slice through the air. "You sent her home for fainting." Brent froze, color draining from his face. She was slowing down the kitchen. "We were busy." "And you cut her hours before that." The diner had fallen silent. A cook leaned out from the kitchen doorway. A family eating pancakes paused mid-bite. Brent looked like he wanted to shrink behind the counter. "Sir, with respect, our staff has rules. Performance expectations. She's often late." "Because she walks miles to get here when buses don't run on time," Khalid said without hesitation. Amora flinched. She had never told him that. Or maybe he had simply seen it. Brent sputtered. "Well, sir, we can't base decisions on personal problems. Khalid took one slow step closer. A step that made Brent step back. "Is compassion a personal problem?" Khalid asked. "Is a human being's hunger inconvenient for your schedule?" "Yes, sir, no." "Then you will explain," Khalid said, voice lower, more dangerous now, "why you humiliated this woman who has worked for you with more dignity than you have ever shown." A gasp rippled through the diners. Someone whispered, "Damn." Brent looked trapped. Sweat gathered at his temples. I didn't humiliate her. She was just struggling to keep up." Khalid's jaw tensed. "Then perhaps the problem is not her performance," he said coldly. "It is your leadership." Amora swallowed, tears rising again, not from hunger this time, but from the shock of someone, for once in her life, fighting for her. Brent opened his mouth, but no words came out. Khalid leaned closer, his voice a quiet storm. "You will correct every wrong you have done to her. or I will correct every wrong you have done to this diner." The room held its breath, because everyone knew what that meant coming from a man like him. And Brent knew it too. The silence inside Larkson's diner thickened until even the humming refrigerator behind the counter felt too loud. Brent Mallory stared at Khalid like a man standing on a trapdoor that might open any second. His fingers fidgeted against the register buttons, knuckles whitening. Khalid didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Authority lived inside his stillness. Amora stood half a step behind him, hands clasped together, breath unsteady. She felt exposed, terrified, and yet, protected for the first time in her life. Every eye in the diner stayed on her, but none carried the contempt she usually saw. This time, there was awe, curiosity, respect. Brent forced a laugh that cracked halfway through. "Mr. Al-Rummi, I think you're misunderstanding. She's a good worker, sure. But she's slow. She's unreliable sometimes." Khalid tilted his head slightly. "Unreliable? Well, sir, she's missed shifts." "Because she works 2 jobs, Khalid cut in. "Because she sends half her pay back home. Because she walked here on days most of your staff would call in." Brent blinked, stunned. How do you know that?" Khalid didn't answer. He didn't need to. People like him saw the world differently. Every detail, every truth people tried to hide behind excuses. The cook stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. "She's the hardest worker we've got," he muttered. "You know that, Brent." Brent shot him a warning glare, but the cook didn't retreat. Khalid spoke again, voice calm, almost surgical. "You penalized her for fainting. You cut her hours without cause. And today, she couldn't afford food because of you." Brent's face turned beet red. "Sir, that's not, this isn't." Khalid stepped closer. The space between them tightened like a noose. "You're speaking in circles," he said. "Try the truth." Brent's throat bobbed. He glanced at the other customers, hoping someone would defend him. No one did. A mother at the booth whispered to her teenage daughter, "About time someone stood up for her." An older man near the window nodded approvingly. Brent's voice cracked. What do you want from me?" Amora flinched. This was the part she feared. Not Khalid's power, but the backlash that would inevitably follow. People like Brent always found ways to punish people like her later. Khalid didn't leave room for doubts. "I want accountability," he said. "And I want restoration." He paused. "For her." Brent swallowed. "Meaning?" "Reinstate her hours. Back pay every shift you illegally removed. And issue a written apology, one she approves, not you." Brent's mouth opened in shock. What? "Sir, that's absurd." Khalid's eyes hardened, the shift so subtle but so lethal it felt like the temperature dropped. "Absurd," Khalid repeated, "is forcing a starving woman to beg for bread while you argue profitability. Absurd is thinking your authority is absolute." He leaned in. "My authority, Mr. Mallory, is not absurd. It is final." A hush fell so thick the whole diner seemed to shrink. Brent stumbled back a step. But I can't just, the owners." "I am acquiring the owners," Khalid said smoothly. "As of this morning." Brent's jaw dropped. The diners gasped. Even the cook froze mid-step. Amora's breath caught painfully. You bought the diner." Khalid turned to her, his expression softening for a heartbeat. "I began negotiations last night. Their financials were public. Their treatment of staff was not. Both matter to me." Brent looked like he was about to faint. "Sir, please." "You will correct every injustice," Khalid said, "or you will pack your things. Today." A murmur of satisfaction rippled through the diner. Several customers nodded. Someone even whispered finally. Brent sputtered weakly. I can fix it. I'll fix everything." "That," Khalid said calmly, is the first honest thing you've said." He turned to leave, but paused, giving Brent the last, sharpest edge of the blade. "And understand this, if you ever treat her with anything less than dignity again, you won't only lose this job. You will never manage another establishment under my ownership." Brent deflated like a punctured balloon. Khalid stepped aside and gestured gently toward Amora.
Come?
She hesitated, eyes darting between Brent's shaken face and Khalid's unwavering stance. "Sir, you didn't have to do all this for me." He held her gaze with an intensity that felt like truth itself. "I didn't do it for you alone. I did it because power means nothing if it doesn't protect those who have none." Her eyes glistened, and as she walked beside him out of the diner, the entire room watched her leave, not as the girl who fainted, not as the dishwasher, not as the one with short hours, but as a woman a billionaire fought for. As Khalid and Amora stepped out of Larkson's diner, the midday sun reflected off the polished chrome of the café sign across the street. Amora's legs felt light and heavy at the same time, light from relief, heavy from realizing how close she had come to complete humiliation. She could barely process what had just happened. A billionaire had not only defended her dignity but had shaken the foundations of her employer's arrogance. Khalid didn't speak immediately. He walked beside her with quiet authority, letting her catch her breath. His eyes scanned the street, calculating, observing, every detail mattered. "You've been working 2 jobs, barely eating, and carrying burdens you didn't need to. That ends now," he said softly. "I will make sure of it." Amora's throat tightened. "But sir, I don't want to trouble you further. You've already—" "Don't mistake justice for trouble," Khalid interrupted, his tone gentle but unyielding. "I see what others ignore. That's all. You will no longer suffer in silence." The city around them buzzed with ordinary lives, yet every passerby who noticed Khalid and Amora felt the weight of the moment, even if they didn't understand it. There was an invisible ripple now, one woman's dignity restored, one arrogant manager exposed, and the unmistakable authority of a man who wielded power responsibly. Khalid guided her to a sleek black car parked across the street. "You will work under my supervision from now on. A proper schedule. Guaranteed meals. Respect. And opportunities." His words were decisive, but his eyes were fixed on her, searching for something more, a spark of her own belief in herself. Amora hesitated. "Sir, I don't even know how to. I mean, working for someone like you, it's overwhelming." Khalid's lips curved faintly, a rare softness that contrasted his immense authority. "Good. Then you will grow into it. Your potential is not defined by what others have denied you. It's defined by what you choose to claim." As they drove past busy streets and office buildings, Amora noticed how people subtly moved aside. Not all recognized Khalid, but power radiated from him like sunlight through the glass, impossible to ignore. The same way his presence had commanded respect in the diner, it now protected her in the world outside. You're not like anyone else I've met," she murmured. "Most people in your position, they wouldn't stop for someone like me." Khalid's gaze was fixed on the road, but his voice softened. "Power is meaningless if it doesn't protect what is right. If it only serves itself, it becomes corruption. I cannot be part of that. And I will not let anyone else be either." Amora's heart pounded. She could feel the weight of responsibility shifting, not on her, but for her. Someone had seen her struggle, her hidden exhaustion, her quiet dignity, and had acted decisively. She had never expected someone of such immense power to act with such humanity. The car pulled into a quieter part of the city. Khalid stopped and turned toward her. "Starting tomorrow, you'll report to my assistant. Full wages restored. Days off granted. And yes, meals provided." Her eyes welled up. I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," Khalid said. "Just walk forward. Everything else will follow." He paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. "And remember, Amora, not everyone has the courage to act. But those who do change lives, sometimes without even realizing it. Today, you've seen that courage. Tomorrow, you'll see your own. Amora swallowed, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. Thank you, truly, sir. Khalid's expression softened just a fraction. You deserve more than thanks. You deserve a life with dignity. And that is what you will have. Trust me. The car merged back into traffic. From the outside, it looked like a simple drive across the city. But inside, Amora felt like she had crossed an invisible threshold, from survival to recognition, from invisibility to being seen, from fear to empowerment. And somewhere deep inside Khalid, there was a quiet reflection. Not all battles required boardrooms, acquisitions, or contracts. Some were fought in quiet corners, over a slice of bread, in the dignity of a human being. That alone was enough to ignite change, not just in one life, but in the ripple effect that would touch many more. He glanced at Amora, and she caught the brief, unspoken acknowledgement. The lesson had been delivered, justice quietly enacted, and a future reshaped. All in the space of a simple act, feeding someone who had been ignored, empowering someone who had been silenced. The next morning, Amora arrived at the cafe across the street, the same worn streets beneath her shoes, but nothing felt familiar. The diner had changed, not because of paint or decor, but because of the tension in the air, the invisible weight of accountability that now hung over everyone inside. She walked with her head held a little higher, shoulders steadier, the confidence Khalid had ignited in her slowly settling in her chest. Inside, Brent Mallory hovered behind the counter, a faint pallor on his face. He noticed her immediately and attempted a smile, weak, strained, hollow. The cooks and servers avoided eye contact, all aware of the man who now held authority over every corner of this place, Khalid al-Rummi. Amora approached her assigned table at the far side of the cafe, where a small note was placed, reserved for dignity. Eat, breathe, and know you are seen. Her lips trembled as she looked at it, and for the first time, someone had validated her existence without expecting anything in return. A soft hum of movement accompanied Khalid's entrance. He did not sit. He walked through the cafe, observing. Customers whispered, some stared, some marveled. But what mattered most was the manager. Brent's shoulders slumped, his hands gripping the counter as if it were the only anchor in a storm. Khalid's gaze met his, calm but unyielding. Every decision, every choice you've made that humiliated her, cut her, or undermined her worth, I have reviewed it all. Your judgment has consequences, Khalid said quietly but firmly. You will implement new policies immediately. Proper scheduling, fair wages, respect for staff, and zero tolerance for humiliation. You will not speak to her in anything less than professional, dignified terms. Failure to comply, and you lose everything. Brent nodded, the color drained from his face. I understand, sir. It will be done. Khalid's eyes swept the room, lingering on Amora for a heartbeat longer. And for you, he said, know that this isn't charity. It's justice. Power is measured not by wealth, but by the courage to correct wrongs. You have survived, and now you are seen. Amora's chest swelled. She felt a warmth spreading from her heart to every limb. It was empowerment, recognition, and finally, the relief of being protected by someone whose authority could not be ignored. Outside the cafe, the city bustled as usual, but inside, lives had shifted. Staff who had once whispered about inefficiency now spoke in careful respect. Customers who had looked away now watched with new awareness, that dignity could not be trampled when someone powerful chose to defend it. Khalid stood near the exit, observing silently. He did not need applause. His work was not for admiration. It was for justice. Every ripple of his actions carried lessons. The manager humbled, the staff emboldened, the once invisible Amora now radiant in the knowledge that power exercised with conscience changes lives profoundly. He finally spoke to her as she approached. Walk with your head high. Today was not about me. It was about truth, fairness, and seeing people for who they really are. She nodded, tears brimming. I will never forget this, sir. No, Khalid said, voice softening. Don't. And remember, carry this forward. Help someone unseen. Stand for someone silenced. That is the real measure of wealth and influence. Amora understood. For the first time in her life, she felt that justice, power, and humanity could coexist, and that even one person, when guided by conscience, could bend the world toward fairness. The city continued around them, indifferent to most. But for Amora, Khalid, and even Brent, the lesson was permanent, the impact lasting, and the change undeniable. True power is not measured by how much wealth one accumulates, but by the courage to act when injustice appears smallest yet sharpest. Authority without empathy is tyranny, but when guided by conscience, it restores dignity, reshapes futures, and inspires those who once believed themselves invisible. Khalid's choice to defend Amora was not merely an act of generosity, but an assertion that justice is timeless, courage is contagious, and human dignity is priceless. In a world that often overlooks the struggling, the silent, and the humble, one decisive act of moral authority can ripple through lives, correcting wrongs, awakening conscience, and leaving behind a legacy that no wealth alone can create. The lesson is simple yet profound. See the unseen, protect the vulnerable, act decisively, and let your power become a force that elevates humanity, not suppresses it. Amora's life was changed forever, but so too were the hearts of those who witnessed it, a testament that courage, justice, and moral clarity always leave a mark that cannot be erased.